guys, Ty here. After what seems like an endless week of storm reports, severe weather, and also even blizzard conditions, we're finally seeing the storm on the way out here. But with that comes this new question. What's next? Stay tuned to find out. Hey everybody, Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well. It's been a long week. 2 storm systems, 2 blizzards, and multiple days of severe weather. Some days being a little bit more intense than others, but nonetheless, we're finally looking like we're at the end of it. But if you think that this is really the end of it and we're going to be back to some really calm weather, I'm sorry to tell you, but we got some bad news here for you. It's a big deal, and if you're an old head of the channel, you kind of know what I'm talking about here, where I'm not doing the weekend forecast. Usually on Friday, this is what we do, because I also see we have a few new subscribers here. Hello to all of you. But in these videos, normally, especially on Fridays, typically we do a weekend forecast. We're kind of foregoing that today, and we're going a little bit of a different route. So, that being said here, if you're new around here, sure you hit that like button. Even if you aren't new around here, hit that like button. But if you're definitely new around here, I would hope you would consider subscribing and maybe even becoming a channel member here. Help support the channel. Help us move further and further along here. Let's keep this ball rolling. I like what we have going on here this year. Sense a real connection between us. All right, all jokes aside though. This week has been pretty intense here, but for the most part today, we seem like we've been spared. We mostly have had damaging wind reports. There was one tornado warning earlier this morning that had an observed tag on it. That's about it. And also, as you can see here, just based on looking at the overview, there's still some heavy snow still going on over towards Michigan right now. The worst of the blizzard conditions are starting to kind of go away here. We still have high winds over towards this area, so that will be a factor. But as far as like falling snow is concerned, we're past the worst of it here. And then, of course, with this, actually a lot of warm air is starting to advect in. So some of this snow is even starting to change into rain as well. But like I said, we're not really here to talk about that. We're here to talk about what's next. Because this has already been a pretty big topic amongst the weather community. But before I get into the cold, the severe weather is another topic, of course. I know that during this time of year it can get really sketchy, especially with these January setups typically being nocturnal. Good news is potential too low from days 4 through 8, and really the severe weather threat after today takes a major nosedive. We don't really have anything else to talk about there. So winter weather is going to be the main talking point along with cold weather in the days ahead here, especially for any of my football heads here, because of course it's playoff season. Alright, so for anyone that's not as familiar with the channel, when we look into the medium to long range here, sometimes we'll look at multiple models at a time. So the 2 models we tend to look at the most here are the European model here. It's a very reliable model, surprisingly. I know probably some people are wondering like, what the heck are the Europeans doing here forecasting? Anyway, all goofiness aside here, very reliable model that we're looking at here. And then of course here's the American-made GFS model here too. We always like to compare these 2 models, and it's not really a forecast that we're trying to do at this point. We're always trying to find trends. And any sort of model agreement or congruency between the 2 definitely helps increase confidence in a potential forecast down the line. So really trends are what we're looking for at this point. So right now what we're doing is we're looking at the upper levels of the atmosphere. We're looking way up, probably about 40,000 feet plus. And this is where a lot of magic happens. We're going to be looking at this in the mid levels here. And this is our current storm system on its way out here. And as we go through the weekend here, we still have some leftover energy, and this is going to definitely be mostly felt in the way of wind. Wind is not going to be going anywhere anytime soon, so it's going to be pretty blustery this weekend. Another thing to make note of is the cold air that's coming into play, that's going to be coming in behind these storm systems here. So that being said, it's going to be very cold. In fact, I saw a report here from the National Weather Service with a football game going on in Kansas City this weekend. Poor Miami Dolphins have to play in Kansas City with the wind chill being below zero. Wind chill advisories are actually in effect over there, so big ouch for them for sure. But that being said, you can see what looks to be the next storm system trying to get itself together and rolling in. With this is going to drag in a lot of cold air to the southeast, so be ready for that. I would urge you to make sure you leave your water faucets dripping at night, because this is going to be some Arctic air that we are dealing with here. I actually ended up taking a look at my own personal forecast for my area, and I saw a low of 15. So 15 for Atlanta. Definitely not something that I'm going to enjoy working in. But across the board here, looks like some really frigid air is on deck for Wednesday night to Thursday in particular across the eastern half of the U.S., really across a lot of the country as a whole here. And then from that point, as we get towards the end of that week, it looks like we do get another storm system trying to develop here. Like I said, really I think winter weather is going to become the main topic over the course of this next week. And then here we go again. At the end of this, we start to see some ridging coming back into play, and then maybe severe weather may come back into the field of play, if you will. So then we go over to the GFS, and like I said, we're really looking for a comparison here. Okay, I'm trying to get this to go, but it's pretty much a similar deal here. We see that storm system roll out, and eventually here comes that big cold blast coming in on Tuesday and Wednesday. Different scenarios and different outcomes with both of these models, especially as we get towards the low levels here. There's been talk of maybe a southern winter event here, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. But we're just really kind of taking a look at what the upper level winds look like. We'll have a timestamp, of course, kind of going over the real details that you in particular are looking for. But this is also for some of our weather heads here, because we got a few of them around. So as we go through the weekend, we get another big cool down, and then of course here's that ridging coming into play. It looks like a cutoff low on the GFS here as we go towards the end of the 10-day period and into the 16-day period that this offers. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, but ultimately what ends up happening here, we end up seeing some ridging, and eventually I'm curious to see just what kind of solution we could end up getting with this as we start to see more storm systems coming back in. Looking like that's going to be how the pattern ends for the month here. Another cutoff low. This could be a big severe weather maker too, but of course we're looking 16 days out. And sometimes weathermen get it wrong just a few days out. 16 days out, I wouldn't put too much merit into this. It's likely to change. So that being said, let's go a little bit lower into the atmosphere, get into the 30 to 40,000 foot range now. We'll be slightly under our jet airliner altitudes here. So of course we'll start out with the Euro, screen to the left, pretty much a similar deal. And this is where you really just see how strong this storm system is. And with this pressure gradient and with these numbers here, which are our pressure contours, we can kind of get a better idea of what kind of air we could expect here. With the 500 range, the 540 line is the 32-degree line, to put that in perspective for you. Once you dip below that number, there's some really cold air usually coming in right behind that. So here's our amped up storm system rolling out of here at this point. We have another little small clipper system following on the coattails of that. It's going to help keep some of that wintry weather around the Midwest here in the Great Lakes. Then eventually what we end up seeing happen as time goes on is this next system comes in, and look how it just pushes that cold air downward. And eventually we end up seeing the southeast catching a piece of that cold air. And as we continue to go forward, here comes that ridge. After that clears out, and I'm starting to glitch out here. All right. Sorry, y'all, had to fix my computer for a second here. I don't know what's going on with that. Why we're having so much trouble when we shift maps like this right now. But here's our next system as we close out the following week. Brings in a little bit more cold air, maybe a chance for some wintry precip towards the northern tiers of the Appalachians here. And then, of course, here's our ridging towards the end of our model run. And I think this is where we have to start watching out for the threat of maybe some severe weather on the back end of the month here. And you can kind of see the same thing going with the GFS starting out. These two have been looking relatively congruent, at least in the upper levels of the atmosphere. It's usually towards the mid levels and below where we start to really see the difference between the two. Now, one thing I am noting already is that the GFS is definitely looking a bit colder in comparison to the Euro. Not really surprising, but definitely something I'm making a note of. See a little bit more ridging a little bit earlier on too. And then also here's that other cutoff low as we start to get past 200 hours here that we're going to be keeping an eye on. With this coming into play here, it actually gets really warm across the southeast, almost as if the southeast ridge is starting to come back into play here. And with that, this storm system, even though it's not super robust, it could come into play in regards to a severe weather threat around the 22nd. So I'm going to be keeping an extra close eye on this region here as we go into the days ahead. And then as we continue to go forward here, here's more ridging. We start to see a little bit of a pattern change here where we're starting to see a little bit more warm air to the south here. So like I said, definitely some key dates that I'm going to be looking at currently, but we'll continue to go on from there. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at our height anomalies. All right, so here's what our air masses are looking like. Another key thing we like to look at here on the channel, and you can just kind of see just how much cold air we're going to be dealing with within the next few days in particular. So here we are Monday night, and here's that next big cold shot here. The Euro isn't kind of picking up on it as strongly as it was earlier today, but still seeing that pressure line reaching 516 here. Some really frigid air is expected over here across the southeast. And here we are with that ridging, and as we continue to move forward here, it's almost like we have a full-on pattern shift here where we're looking at a negative PNA. The negative PNA is basically a look where we see the cooler temperatures being prevalent across the west and warmer temperatures prevailing across the east. GFS is pretty much showing a similar deal starting out, but the volume of the cold air is a lot more impressive on the GFS versus the Euro here. And keep in mind, this is a brand new GFS run that's just come in. The Euro run is starting to come in around the time of this video, but in time too, we still end up seeing a pretty similar look here. Eventually we end up seeing that ridging really begin to kick in here towards the end of this run, and we're starting to see a lot less cold air, but these colder air masses are going to be pretty much represented more so in these storm systems. So like I said, threat for severe weather looks like it could increase once again towards the end of the month here. Just some things to make note of as we continue to go forward here. Now the big topic here, temperatures. Temperatures are going to be plunging downward very quickly. Here's our time frame right here in the top left corner for both of these models. So start out with the Euro since it's a shorter run. Look at what happens just through tonight and into tomorrow morning. We're starting to see the southeast start to get into these more frigid temperatures, but look at how far the below zero lows have reached. And this is of course heading into the week, to a playoff weekend here, wild card weekend for those of you that are NFL fans. It's going to be a pretty frigid one. Like I said, I feel really bad for the Miami Dolphins. You're used to playing in really warm weather, and now you have to go to Kansas City and deal with below zero temperatures. I hope those guys are ready for their sakes. Hope it'll be a good game. But across the board here, you can continue to see these colder temperatures. Now we're even starting to see these even as high as being below zero over the course of the next couple of days. Throughout the first chunk of the week here, it's going to be pretty frigid. Here's Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Those lows are even reaching the southeast where we're getting into the teens here. Getting some single digit temperatures even into the Ohio Valley. And of course around the Great Lakes, we're getting some below zeros as well. Fortunately, this isn't going to be a long-lived event because we start to see that ridging coming into play. Midwest really seems like the area that's going to have the toughest time with this freeze here. It's going to be the longest duration over there, but eventually, like I said, with that ridging beginning to come into play here, we eventually start to warm back up. And this is also evident on the GFS as well. See pretty much a similar deal starting out. And then as we go towards the end of the week, we start to see just a little bit of warming up ever so slightly. And then from beyond that point, this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting starting out. We see that once we get past 240, we get into the 40s, we're getting into the 50s, and then here come the 60s and 70s towards the end of the run here, towards the southeast coast here. Eventually, I do see this pushing maybe a little further north than what's being indicated here right now. But of course, like I said, with as far out as we're looking, a lot of room for changes here. So what we'll do next is we'll go ahead and get into the wind maximums here. We'll start out with the Euro, of course, and it's really going to be what we're looking at over the next 6 hours with this run here. This is just kind of looking at just what the winds would be at that particular hour. I kind of prefer this run personally, because this will just show you just how intense the wind could be. This is about where we are right now. Still got plenty of strong winds available across the entire eastern half of the U.S. here. Towards the mountains is where those winds are going to be strongest. We could even see up to 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts possibly, which is incredible. It just shows how strong these last couple storm systems have been. And then, of course, over here towards the Rockies, we have some really strong winds as well. That snow could still be blowing around for the next day or so. Maybe not quite the blizzard conditions, but travel could still be treacherous across this region here into the Midwest as we continue to try to thaw out from what we've just gone through, and still dealing with the cold temperatures as well. Many wind chill advisories and wind chill warnings are probably going to be in effect here with that cold air that's coming in now. So this is that wind energy starting to die down, but here comes the next system right behind that. And even though it may not be a prolific precipitation maker, it's still gonna kind of add insult to injury, because it's just going to be cold across the board here. So in general here, just kind of make sure you're ready for a really cold week. If you got some firewood, you got the space heaters ready, just make sure you're following your fire safety tips. We don't want anyone burning their houses down, of course. And eventually, as we continue to go forward here, it looks like the next storm system also will have its fair share of wind energy towards the end of this run. Of course, this is still kind of, the jury's still kind of out with this one. Same is pretty much set with the GFS. And as we see that next system come roll on out of here, it looks like we get a little bit of a break from the winds in comparison, but eventually it does look like we start to see some stronger winds returning as we head towards the end of the upcoming week. Then after that, much stronger storm looks like it tries to take shape here. Get some 40-mile-per-hour gusts possibly as we go from the 23rd onward. And then as we head towards the end of the month, we do look like we start to calm down just a little bit. Of course, we still have to watch out for those clipper systems a little further to the north. So a couple things to look out for also. You're not going to really see too much in the way of moisture return here as far as severe weather starting out. Like this was a big part of the catalyst, a big part of what was a catalyst to severe weather potential, although it didn't really quite verify as well as what was expected, I would say. But as time goes on here, we see that head out, and look how dry this air is. It's not very often that you see dew points at 20 below zero or 30 below zero, but that just shows how cold the air actually is. The thing to make note of here, and here's a little fun fact for you: as we get colder air, the air tends to dry out a bit more. So moving along with the deep freeze here, we're going to continue to see this cold air dominant for a while here. Eventually, towards the end of this, we are going to see a bit of a moisture return towards the end of this upcoming week. And with that, maybe there's a chance of severe weather. Like I said, really, I think the better chance is going to be towards the end of the month, because that cold air is just going to continue to rush in here. And it's going to kind of keep that severe threat kind of hampered down for a while here. This is going to be prevalent on both models. So looking at the GFS, you're going to see a pretty similar deal here. Just remember to keep an eye on the top left corner here for the time frame. This is us looking at the 13th right now, so starting out the weekend. And here comes the deep freeze that we're talking about here. It's been making headway for a while, and this is going to continue. And on GFS, interestingly enough, if you look over to the left here, you can actually see the negative dew points even making it towards my neck of the woods, which is going to be absolutely insane to think about. The fact that we aren't that far from the Gulf here, we're about a 5-hour drive from it, and seeing dew points below zero, that is something to behold here. Like I said, I'm really just a weather nerd at the end of the day here. But here's that moisture return. Here's that first moisture return. And like I said, really it looks like Florida's going to be the point of interest with that. Maybe could be some severe weather depending on how strong that surface low ends up getting. And then as we continue to go on here, we start to see much better moisture return as we get closer towards the end of the month. And that's what's going to be kind of taking my focus there as we continue to draw forward. So I'm going to be definitely keeping an eye on this point here, looking for trends at this point. Large scale ascent is going to also be a key factor with this setup here as well. So this is us going to the end of the run here. Does look like some moisture does try to come in here as well. So it really just depends on that that low pressure area, how it ends up forming, and so forth. Cannot speak. How that low pressure ends up forming and at what levels will determine a lot of what lies ahead here. Of course, 16 days out. We're going to be looking at that for a while. So one more thing to look at here, and we're going to go ahead and just take a look at the forecast here. Really outside of Florida, I don't really see too much in the way of showers and thunderstorms. Really, it's going to be winter weather at this point here. So we'll start out by taking a look at the rest of our week here. I don't know how we got to the end of the run. That was weird. But that being said, here's our time frame again. This is our current storm system rolling out of here. Some remnant snow, of course, left over as we mentioned before. And then, of course, here comes our next system over the Rockies. What's left of it is going to end up pushing off to the east here. And we need to be paying attention to this, even though this doesn't look like it's going to be a big storm system for everybody here off to the east here. Some remnant moisture and some cold air left over could mix into some snow flurries for the southeast here. I haven't really seen much of that going on over here, really, especially further to the south of the Appalachians. So could see that possibly as we go into Tuesday. And then beyond that point, there is some questionability as to whether or not we end up seeing a little bit of action over here towards the northeast. I think the low's a little bit too far away, and there's going to be a limited amount of moisture as a result of that. But as a result, we still could see maybe some areas like New York City, Philly, Boston, seeing some snowflakes falling. Not going to be much of anything of significance, but still, it'll be a nice sight for some of you. Some of you also hate the snow up here, so you might hate it as well. So that being said, there's that. And here comes the next little period of quiet going on with this high pressure, but eventually low pressure does come back in, and this one is what's kind of caught my attention a bit more over the last day or so. I haven't really put too much merit into this, but the cold air and moisture seems like it's in a good spot so far, and maybe towards the southern Appalachians we could get some more snow, maybe a little bit more significant than the system that could be coming in on Tuesday. Of course, 168 hours out, a long ways to go. And then also, like I said, with that last system, the track of this low is going to be key. I kind of like the track of this low better for much greater snowfall over here towards the northeast here. So really, the track of this low right here, this surface low, is going to be the key to everything as far as next weekend's weather is going to be concerned. And then from that point, of course, we stay relatively calm from that point to the 10-day period. Why is this one going all the way to the end? But anyway, it's pretty much a similar look starting out, but keep in mind GFS was colder than the year when we looked at the temperature outlook, and you can actually see a little bit more in the way of moisture. I think that is partially due to the low being in closer proximity to that moisture here and that cold air in general. And then if we can keep this track a little bit closer here, we would get more snow towards the northeast, but this pushes out a little bit quicker because of that cold air advancing more rapidly. So this would kind of keep the Northeast out of play in regards to snow, and maybe a little bit more towards Nova Scotia. We could get some action there. And then as we continue to go forward from there, here's our next system. Organizes a little bit better here. But what I'm concerned about here is the fact that we end up seeing what looks to be some sleet and some ice here. This concerns me, especially considering I'm seeing that 546 line. So at some level of the atmosphere here, we may see some warm air coming into play here as well. Could even be some cold air damming. But like I said, this is pretty much a week out. So like I said, a lot of uncertainty exists with that setup as well. So kind of a touch and go type of deal right now. But it looks like with this one, we might have to keep our eyes on it, because we do see a little bit of congruency between GFS and the Euro. And then the track of this low, of course, kind of heading a little further out to sea, so kind of limits the northeastern winter weather effects there. We continue to go forward. Here's our next couple of systems here. Nothing of major significance from that point. Do see a couple areas where we could get some widespread rain here. This is also going on with that ridging in play. And then here is our next storm system towards the Gulf. Maybe we could see some severe weather towards Florida possibly. But like I said, long ways out. A lot of changes are probably ahead here for some of these storm systems. So all you can do is just kind of keep an eye on things. You want to stay up to date with every video, make sure you hit that bell. And also make sure you hit that like button as well. Again, if you're new here and if you made it to the end, definitely consider subscribing. What could it hurt, honestly? But anyways, I'm gonna call it a night here. I'll see you guys again soon. Might be tomorrow or Sunday, depending on how things play out here. May actually do an analysis as to maybe why this last storm system kind of was an underperformer in regards to severe weather. That's if anyone's interested in that. I might leave a voting poll on there. That being said here, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you again soon. I will see you later. It's been Tyler, your Metalhead Weatherman. Take care and have an awesome rest of your night.